go. We are back again for Meet Music Knoxville. That's right. It's the show where I, your host, Nick Horner, has no clue what's going on. But that's what's supposed to happen. I'm supposed to come in painfully and woefully in the dark and become enlightened by the great guests that we bring here. And when I say here, I'm actually saying the Sunsphere, because for the first time, I think in about a year, I have a guest up in the Sunsphere with me. It's a beautiful day. Dogwood Arts Festival is happening outside. They're having a blast. We're about to comparably have a blast. Before we get started, though, with today's guest, who I'm really excited about, we have, first of all, have to thank Raven Records and Rarities for supporting Real Knoxville music. I say this every time, and I mean it with so much appreciation in my heart. We cannot do it without you. Thank you for your support. This station is a community station, and every dollar you can give to support what we do makes a difference. So thank you so much for that. And then I also have exciting news. Make Music Knoxville. I'm blanking on this. I literally have been working on it all day. Make Music Knoxville has our official event set up. That's right. It is Build a Band, which is happening on June 21st. Musicians from around the city will be coming together to form impromptu bands and play the music of other local artists. As we like to call it, it's a love letter to local music here in Knoxville. It's going to be over at Next Level Brewing all day on June 21st. So put that in your calendars. It will be worth it. It will be amazing. And this is our third year doing it, and we are super excited for it. And perhaps I'm more excited, though, to be sitting here with someone whose name I've heard a lot since moving here in 2020. He does a lot of things. He has a lot of interests. A lot of them are mutual. And probably my favorite thing is that I was listening to his record for the first time today, and Bob Deck was narrating the first track of it. And if you don't know Bob Deck, you will love Bob Deck when you meet him. So we can't get him on the show. I already know him. But anyway, Todd Steed is here with me. Todd, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, man, this is great. Any excuse to come to the Sunsphere is a beautiful thing, and it is. This was like almost like a spiritual object to me growing up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you grew up here in Knoxville?
Yeah, I was born over in St. Mary's Hospital, which is a former spiritual object, which is now dust. But I grew up here. I worked at the World's Fair, in fact.
Really?
Yeah.
What did you do at the World's Fair?
Well, it was one of the less glamorous jobs, I'm afraid. I was probably 19. I started out as a parking lot attendant, and then I clawed my way through backstabbing and manipulation to be manager of parking lots, South Side. I never make it, and they gave me a moped, and my job was this is actually my job. There's no managing parking lots; they just sit there. But there were a number of parking lots that surrounded the fair, and there were a lot of people that worked in them, taking up money. But they had to go to the bathroom because it's a 6-hour shift. So they gave me a moped, and I rode around and gave people bathroom breaks for 6 hours every day.
Well, it could be worse. You could be one of those people that is literally forced to be in that parking lot throughout the whole summer. You know, at least you got some variety in there.
Yeah, what had happened was, I guess now it all can be told. There were 3 moped leaders, and one of the moped leaders had a moped accident, probably not driving as carefully as he should have been. And he got injured, and so that was like, they called me up from the minor leagues and said, you're going to pitch tonight, kid. And they put me on the moped, and I didn't wreck it. So that got me out of the parking lot, which you can't see it from here, but if you know where Circle Park is at UT, it's like directly behind Circle Park and right in front of the stadium. There's a parking lot there. Yeah, that was mine.
That was your domain.
Yeah, and my sister was working in Annie Hill Tower and just see me out there, just like she said, I would just be sitting out there with my hands in my head in my hands, just like looking at the ground. It was a very boring job.
Did you have, I mean, being around and engaged in that and a young person, did you have any formative experiences? I mean, other than obviously, the glamour of, giving people bathroom breaks. Did anything formative come out of that World's Fair experience for you?
Yeah, it was actually beautiful. I mean, despite the parking lot section, which was fine, really. But what had happened was that we got to know a lot of the employees that worked in the fair, including the one working the front gate, and including the one serving the beer at the down under pavilion, the giant Foster beers, those big, look like oil cans. And so they became our friends, and they would just say, just come on in and just come have a beer on me. And so I basically went to the fair for free. I didn't ask for any of this. It was foisted upon me. And so I got to go to the fair for free for the whole time and made a ton of friends from around the world. Growing up in Knoxville, it was kind of strange to see Chinese people from China, running around. And there was Koreans, Japanese, I believe Saudi Arabia, countries from South America. So you get to meet all these great people, hear all this great music, and also at the time, Knoxville's music scene was rocking. And all those tourists would go to Cumberland Avenue to see what was happening, what's happening on that strip. And we would pack out shows with complete strangers, man, from places like Ohio
and Vermont.
Yes,
I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
There
but
were
like
Vermontized evenings for sure. There are people from all over the country, mostly from the Midwest, but they're from in the South. But there are people from all over the country that came to the fair.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah,
and what's so interesting, right, is that you were for a while. I'm not going to get the actual role right, but you were over at UT, basically overseeing students doing international travel, right?
Yeah, study abroad.
Yeah, and you were saying, I promise folks we didn't meet before this interview, but while we were up here, we were talking about, you living abroad. And so that was clearly a big part of your life. Do you think that the World's Fair was like probably the genesis of that interest to explore and head overseas?
It was already pretty deep in me when I don't know why. It's like my nephew, who's an archivist named Bradley Reeves. I remember when he was 7, he was obsessed with films and recordings and things like this and history. And I was kind of like that about the world, and of course, all I had really were a few books, around the world in 80 days and things like that, to sort of like whet my appetite or watch movies, that took place in other countries. But I was fascinated. But our family didn't do much traveling. We would just basically go to Georgia and Alabama and see relatives, which was great, really. Don't regret that. But as soon as I got old enough, I started to want to go out and see things. But the World's Fair definitely reinforced that.
Sure,
there's a whole other world out there.
Yeah. Where was the first place you went abroad to?
South Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the draw there?
I knew how to pronounce it.
That's always a good start.
Yeah, I was like, well, I can pronounce that country. No, it was weird, and this is coincidence, sort of. Being an old Knoxvillian, even at a young age, I had friends that managed to get me into the better housing on campus, even though I was a freshman. So my roommate, I think my sophomore year, was a South African guy. He was a white South African, and this was apartheid was like quite happening at that time. It was in the news. It was very intense, and so I remember like, oh man, I don't know about this, a South African roommate. I don't know about that. Yeah. And turns out he was like incredibly great, open-minded, nothing like what I expected, which, goes to show you stereotypes are stereotypes. And so we ended up becoming great friends, and he invited me to come, to South Africa. I'd never been on an airplane, and it's
a long trip for a first airplane.
Yeah,
ride,
especially having a fear of flying that was over by the time we crossed, the Congo. I was so bored. And I was like, I'm not afraid of flying. I'm bored of flying. And I went, and I mean, it was amazing on so many levels, mind blowing. And it wasn't. Also, I didn't have the right amount of knowledge, which I really could have used, because in those days you'd have to check out books and look up and learn, and there just wasn't a lot of time to do that, and there weren't a lot of books. I read as much as I could in newspapers, but just getting over there and it's like going back in time 100 years.
Yeah.
It was hard, and then also beautiful, because I met so many great people of all races and all backgrounds. And then the political thing was a great lesson. What happens when people who are not kind are in charge? We've seen some of that, but I'll never forget it. It's not like you're like going to Italy or something where you're like, we're going to go see the Colosseum. It's like we're going to go see apartheid, but also we went to game parks and saw animals, elephant herds running in the wild, and so it was just on so many levels crazy and wonderful. Yeah.
Ned, there's so many directions that I want to take this conversation, so I got to just pick one. You went on to live abroad for some time. Where were you living abroad?
Yeah, so I mean, as soon as I got to South Africa, I remember thinking like, well, if I really want to understand this place, I should live here. And I went back to South Africa a couple of times, and I hitchhiked across it and stayed with families of all backgrounds, but I was like, I don't want to live here. So I just kind of waited until I had my moment. I studied in Guatemala, and then what had happened was I was playing the rock music with the boys, the Smokin' Dave boys, and we've been together like, I think 11 years, and then there was a moment where we all just kind of looked at each other and went, that's enough of that. Like, I don't think I want to be in this band anymore, and I want to breathe that smoke anymore, and play that song again.
Well, without the smoke, it's just Dave. It's way less rockin'.
That's right. And so I had a lot of pen pals. So everywhere we go, I would get people's addresses, and that was kind of a hobby. I had pen pals all over the place, and I wrote every one of them and said, "The band's breaking up. What's next?" And one of my pen pals had the letter forwarded to her in Lithuania, and she wrote me back and said, "Lithuania is for you. It's the Marx Brothers meets Al Capone." I'm like, that sounds intriguing. And then I said, well, yeah, I'd like to come there, And I wrote her a letter saying, yeah, can you find me a job? And all this is like 3 weeks. And like, about 6 weeks into it, 9 weeks into it, she's like, I found you a job, I found all your friends, and I found you a place to live.
Wow.
And one other thing, I'm leaving, but don't worry. I was like, why are you leaving?
She goes, because of the Al Capone piece.
Yeah, well, I ran into that. That's for sure. But so I just trusted her. I really didn't know her.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know her. It was just a pen pal. Actually, you can know your pen pals pretty well. I knew her enough to trust her. And I knew that if she found me a job as she described it, I knew I would love it. And it's exactly what happened. I worked in a music school. And we translated Nirvana lyrics, into Lithuanian. And what is heart-shaped box? That's actually word for word. Teacher, what is heart-shaped box? It's like, oh boy, that's hard. That's hard to explain. So yeah, I worked in this music school and did other work over there as well. But that's how it all started.
Wow. Well, I love that thing you just said prior to that about trust, and that's something I found. We're getting to know each other. I was on the road for a couple of years. I was on the road for 7 months out of the year, and traveling and playing music, especially when you put yourself at the mercy of like other people, it teaches you a lot about humanity and a lot about just, man, it's putting yourself out there is the most beautiful way to like forge connections with people and make those bonds. And I can only imagine the way that was happening for you, going to a place you didn't even know anybody.
Not a soul.
Not a soul, yeah.
It forces you, like touring, like showing up in countries alone. It forces you to live, man. It forces you to be 100% alive. You rip away everything all your habits or whatever, your support systems, all that. It's like you become very alive very quickly.
Yeah.
And it feels great.
Oh, yeah.
Once you get out of the corner in the fetal position.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, and I just think that it's a beautiful thing. I think today, going back to sort of, I'm not going to say politics, I'm just going to say this, we're in a time when people are very divided. I think that, I'll just say this. When I started touring with Luke, I toured with a duo. That's actually where I met Ryan for the first time. I was touring a duo called Nick and Luke, and we played in Chattanooga. Yeah. But, like, this is great. I'm going to tie this in. The Office, which is in, So I remember sitting in the office, and, it was right after Trump, was into office. And, in a time when it just seemed like in the North, it's, everyone hated everyone, and down here, it's like people didn't talk about it as much, but it felt like everyone hated everyone. But just, it forces you to be present with people and realize that those differences are not nearly as strong as the world would have you believe. So when I hear your story about doing this, it's like, man, that's it. I feel like if more people did that, put themselves out there and challenge themselves to live, a lot of these barriers would kind of crumble a little bit. Yeah,
well, you get to be the other. You get to be the one without the power. You get to be, there was a moment in South Africa on the one where I hitchhiked, which ended up being incredible, where a bus dropped me off in a township, and it was this white kid from Tennessee and about 3,000 Africans. And I, for the first time in my life, goes, okay, that's what that feels like,
Yeah.
I not only can I just know, like, theoretically, I can feel it, like what it's like to be. And I had no problems, everyone was curious, but I also definitely felt like, okay, I am clearly only can be seen initially as a white guy, and what does that feel like? Just to be like, there's a white person here. What does that feel like? I think, and what ended up being, it was a beautiful experience in that township. Everybody's like trying to help me, like, because they knew how stupid I was. They're like, no. If you're going this way, you should go that way. If you go there, you should go this. You can ride this bus, and we'll ride with you. And we'll take you to this place. Like, the whole family's going to get on the bus with me and take me to this place. And it was fabulous. But, that's one of the things I liked about study abroad, is it forced people to realize, stereotypes, they exist for a reason, because we have to compartmentalize to understand, but what damage they do. And also you start realizing that, well, if people have been lying about this and lying about that, what else have they been lying about? And why are people trying to make me scared of everybody? Mm-hmm. And you can go beyond conservative, liberal. There are all sorts of organizations out there and people interested in power that are trying to scare you. Trying to scare you about this or that and the other, and it's not good. It's not good for us.
Yeah. Oh man, that's deep shit, and it's true.
Yeah.
But I'm getting to know you, so we can talk more about that later off the air. Talk about scary. You were mentioning before, you are a radio host. I don't mean to do a total 180 here, but I am trying to cover everything in an hour.
Yeah.
You radio DJ. Do you do one of the jazz shows at, which is the station?
WOT.
Yeah, that's right.
Improvisations.
And you receive you said in April you received over 4,000?
Yeah, from January to April.
Oh, yeah.
I looked in the inbox, and there were 4,000 submissions for music.
Dang.
Yeah. And having been on the other end of that, I know what it feels like. And so I literally, it's one of the weirdest things. I don't think I've ever had a job I've loved as much as this one. I've loved them all on some level, but this one has, I think, been my favorite. And but I never get over that there's a slight sadness in the job.
Yeah.
Of like, if you were to see my desk right now, first of all, you'd say, you need to clean your desk. Someone needs to clean your office. But they're literally like 100 CDs just kind of around my desk. And I get sad because I know how hard somebody worked on every single one of those. And if they're jazz musicians, they probably worked extremely hard before they ever made the record just to get good enough to make the record. You know, being able to play jazz at a decent level, it's kind of like having a black belt in music. I mean, you got to be pretty damn good. And so I still, and I've talked to with other radio hosts and stuff around the country, and they all feel the same way. They all feel bad that they can't listen to everything. And once a year, at the end of the year, in December, I go through what I call the unloved CDs. And there are literally 800 or 900 sitting over on this table. And I just go through those. I just go down there and I bring me a bunch of food, make a big pot of tea, and I just start going through as many as I can and do a whole show based on all the stuff that I missed.
Wow.
But even then,
that's what is that?
It's symbolic.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a background as a jazz player, or you just love jazz? And how did you end up with this show? It's so many questions.
Yeah, am I qualified? Would be a good one.
The thing I think,
good question.
Well, I don't know. What the hell is qualified?
Do I understand the music? Can I pronounce Miroslav Vitus?
It is good to be able to say the names correctly.
Yeah.
That I suppose that is qualification. But
I miss them sometimes, and I hear from people. But I sometimes I host classical, and it's the same question, you know. Like,
yeah.
But it's a great question because I don't play jazz. I mean, I can play a little bit. I mean, over the years, I've picked up a tune or two. Bob Deck will show me how to play Monk or something.
Yeah.
But I've always loved it, and my parents listened to it growing up. And my roommates in college one of them was a jazz major, and so he turned me on to like all the great Miles Davis records and things like that. And then I taught a jazz appreciation course for several years, so I've actually really studied it and loved it. I think the real qualification is you have to love it.
Yes.
And then you'll get better as you go along. I've been trying. But I've been doing the show since 2006, and I feel like it's the last year or two where I feel like, okay, I feel really comfortable doing this. So there you go.
Who's doing a show like that for, what is that, 8? It's 17 years, I think, at this point, right?
Yeah,
who are some of the artists that you found through doing that show that you feel like, I don't know. The one thing I love about jazz is that there's so much. I mean, there's the craft in it, but there's also just so much spirit in a lot of that music. Who are some of the people that you found that you felt you've developed a fundamental connection to as players?
Oh man, there's so many. One that recently came in the station. It was handwritten, like the return address was handwritten. So sometimes sometimes that's the one I'll go to first. I'm like, that's the bass player. That looks like bass player's handwriting. And there's a group, I believe, from either New Hampshire or Vermont called Weird Turn Pro, and they were absolutely brilliant. Great musicians, great ideas, and I just loved it. And I can look on the jazz charts and no one else but us is playing it that I could see. And that would be an example. But every week something comes in, that excites me, like to a high degree. Every week something comes in.
Yeah.
And like Julian Lodge, the new record came in. I mentioned Ricky Lee Jones before we started talking, like, wow, this is a really cool record. She's doing jazz and she's doing it great. And there's just a lot of young people. I mean, I remember when the Bad Plus was young.
Yeah.
And they're still kind of young. But those kinds of records are all thrilling, and there's a lot of a lot of underground things that come out. And it's always fun if you're the one that like you play it before anybody else does. It's always really exciting because the artist knows. The artist, a new artist will Google their name all day long. Waiting to see if is it popping up anywhere, and you'll hear from these people. Some of them go on to have like big careers, like Jasmine Horn and people like that, great singers. And you'll get an email from them or a phone call. It's always really cool.
Oh man, yeah. I think that's one thing I've noticed, and I do have a little bit of a background in jazz. I don't call myself a jazz player because the black belt thing.
Yeah,
I'm like hovering somewhere around what's the second from the bottom?
Green? I don't know.
Green, maybe green or blue.
Chartreuse. I'm a chartreuse belt.
Yeah.
The white belt stripes.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I am? I'm like a white. If the white is where you start, I'm like the white belt, but then like I accidentally dunked the corner of it in black ink. It's like I feel like some things I understand to a deep level, but mostly I'm just a fool. But all that to say, I am so impressed by like young, the capability of young jazz musicians, and now with the world at their fingertips to pull in all of these different influences, there's just such great music being made in like the improvised music world.
And it's made by people who love doing it. I mean, Margarita Fava is from Italy.
She was on the show.
Yeah,
she's like a third or fourth. Oh yeah.
And so there's an example of her record. Is now it's we played it probably first or second in the country, and now it got 4 stars in Downbeat.
Yeah,
and like wow. Tabor Gable is an amazing talent, and of course all the UT jazz faculty, Eric Reed, all those folks, Greg Tardy, Keith Brown, Jack Robin, Jorge Variego.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just like, ooh, Knoxville.
Yeah, it's great.
I love this town.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's such a it's like I was in New York for 8 years before this. I had no clue until I came down here. I remember we were touring through here, and I stopped in the place that's on the corner that's now has a different name. It's like on the corner of Market Square. And I saw the Big Ears poster. I was like, what the hell? It's like, where are we? They're bringing all of these people through here. And it's like, man, this is a great town for this kind of music.
It is a great town for music. And it's always, and I know Big Ears kind of seems shocking in a sense that it's here, and it is. But I will say, Knoxville has always had this really healthy underground music scene. And in the early 80s, there was a real big punk rock scene that just popped up out of nowhere at a time when there were probably a dozen punk rock bands in a city this size in 1981.
Yeah.
And we would go play Birmingham, and Atlanta had a pretty good scene, but we would go to Birmingham and Jackson and Greensboro and places like that, and they didn't have half the kind of crazy stuff that we had going on, and there was a lot of support for it. So that was and I know that all the people in that scene have branched out over the years to do all sorts of cool stuff in a lot of different places.
Yeah,
and WOT actually had a show called Unradio there for a while, which is a great name for a radio show. So you had like a lot of the people like Ashley Capps and Mike Dotson and Lee Gardner, who was Essential Tremors, who was here for Big Ears out of Baltimore. They were all playing all that crazy stuff on the radio in the 80s and 90s when a lot of radio stations wouldn't touch
it. Yeah,
you wouldn't hear them. I mean, you hear Minutemen on a college station, but you wouldn't hear Minutemen on an NPR station typically. But here you did.
Well, can I ask, because I've theorized about this a lot, and my theories are all based in my experience down here. Why? What were the factors that were in place that you think made it that this type of music could thrive? And and likewise, is there anything that you think that we could do better as a scene, or to facilitate that more? There's great music happening here, but I'm just curious your impressions.
Yeah, I've always kind of wondered why. I mean, I gotta, in a way, point to one person, and don't ever underestimate what one person can do. Terry Hill, he was a guitar player. He played in a band called Balboa with Hector Kirko on the guitar. Richard Battaglia, who went on to be Bela Fleck's sound man.
Wait, what's his name?
Richard Battaglia.
That's hilarious. I met Richard. I ran the music at. So Richard's from here.
Yeah, more or less.
That's so funny.
Yeah, Chard. That's what we call him.
Oh man.
Yeah, I saw him walking during Big Ears carrying banjo over to the church. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's where I was. I ran the church.
Okay, so when they did the duo.
Yeah.
I saw Richard walking through with the banjo, and I was like, I bet Bela's going to be playing in the church. Surprise show! I'm already here. And it was great. Yeah, and so Richard was the bass player in that band, and there were a couple different drummers. Doug Klein, who's still around, Steve Housewright. And they were all teachers, or most of them were teachers. And so, have this Clash album, have this Sex Pistols album, have this Pretenders album, have this Frank Zappa album, this David Bowie album, this Beefheart record. Terry and Hector and all those folks, they were like Johnny Punk Appleseeds. But not just punk, King Crimson and things like that. And or like, oh, you like the Beatles? Well, you never heard Plastic Ono Band? Oh, come on, And so I think really, it was a college town, that helped. Also, the drinking age being 18 made a huge difference, because when Smoke and Dave would tour, we noticed that if we played places with a drinking age of 21 or even a drinking age of 20 or 19, it was not the same as a drinking age of 18 in terms of the music scene. It just, there was this weird threshold. And so, the college town like that, also because we're far enough from the stink of Nashville, the absolute commercial stink of Nashville, that we didn't know any better. There was no hope of getting a record deal. It's ridiculous. Right. So if there's no hope of that, then just do what you think.
Yeah.
Play what you want. Play what you feel. And then, but I think really Terry and Hector and Balboa really was the sort of spark that made all those other things come together.
Wow.
Still one of the best bands I've ever seen live, period.
Oh, man. Is there footage out there?
I don't know if there's any video footage at all. There's some audio recordings which will give you an idea.
Yeah.
But it's the live shows were, I've seen Led Zeppelin, I've seen Muddy Waters. I saw Devo when they were starting out, and the list goes, like anybody else, the list goes on and on. But Balboa Live, to me, was about the most exciting thing I've ever seen.
Wow. Man.
Very short period, too. They went together. They moved up to New York, and it fizzled, and that was it.
Yeah. Oh, dang. Wow. It's funny, as you're talking about that, I can't help but think about the stink of Nashville, which is funny because it's like, I don't.
Sorry.
I moved here from New York, so it's like New York. If Nashville stinks, New York is. How about this? If Nashville is the anus, New York is like definitely an armpit, possibly some other section of the body that would reek. I don't know. All this to say, we're living in a time which is so interesting with the internet. On the one hand, you can find everything, right? And you have all this access to all of this music from everywhere. I think about this with engaging with young musicians. And on the other hand, you're constantly tempted with the ability to make it. You watch people shoot off on Instagram, and they just put up their song, and someone's just like, oh, this is amazing. And it just goes viral, And so we're just in a bizarre time where it's, so unique yet simultaneously can be so canned, And I'm fascinated by that, and hope we can, I guess I don't have a question for you from this. I was just wanted to pontificate.
You're riffing, yeah. And I do want to say, when I say this, the stink of Nashville, I absolutely mean it, and it's still there, and it's hard to get off. You can use Brillo pads and all, soak it overnight. You can soak Nashville overnight. It's still, that stink is good. You're not going to get rid of it. There has been amazing talent and people and band, Jason and the Nashville Scorchers, and there's just been all sorts of great people that have come out of there, and East Nashville scene and all that. I'm talking more about the damage the commercial side of it did to the actual art. Mm-hmm. And it did, and it still does. And I noticed, and I'm guilty myself, when we would play Nashville, and I would notice that sometimes the record company people in their audience, and I might like, okay, let's play the most commercial song we have, first. I might sell out on some tiny level. And it didn't work. And and then after a while, you're like leaving of fear and decline of Western civilization. If there are any AR people in the audience, go die. Then you turn into that. But we opened up for the Georgia Satellites the night they got signed.
No way.
Yeah, and they were great. They were a great band, great pub band, great rock and roll band. Wonderful people, and I can't remember if it was EMI or whoever it was, MCA that signed him. I don't remember, but we knew that all the record company people were in there that night, and I was like, okay, this is it, boys, But we knew, like, who the hell would sign? I wouldn't sign us, if I was trying to make money. But we did. We tried to play our absolute best show, just to say, like, just in case someone wants the also ran, And this guy came backstage. I wish I could remember his name and which record company he was from. I don't. They all looked alike, but they all had that weird stink on them. And he came back and I said, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so records. And I was like, yeah? He goes, I just want to say something, man. You're my new favorite band. I mean, I wouldn't sign you in a million fucking years. And I quote, I went, it's probably good for both of us. He said, oh, I loved what you guys, but that's the kind of, that kind of thing we can't, I don't even know what to do with it. I was like, I know what you can do with it. you can take your ponytail and, all that stuff you're sniffing and put it all in the same place.
Trucks on outside. Well, let's cycle back to this. Something that I was hoping we could talk about because you mentioned it. Are we expecting a new recording? Or we should do the ominous thing. A new recording from Todd Steed.
From the depths of Apeville Studios comes an actual finished product. I know what you can do with it.
Is that what you're going to name it?
No, it's actually got. I named it before I even started working on it. That way, it's like I don't have to worry about that part later. It's called Barkus, and it's a soundtrack to a movie that I wrote. That I sketched out. I didn't write a movie, but I sketched a movie, and it's the soundtrack for the movie that'll never exist. And it's the story of a dog named Barkus, and I actually have a wooden dog in the house named Barkus. Long story. He's a real wooden dog, and but in this story, there's a certain man who freaks out at the Postal Museum in Washington D.C. and goes on this amazing odyssey and ends up in the desert out near Tucson, and eats what he thinks are peyote buttons, but they're really just old raisins that have mold on them. And he has a lot of hallucinations, not from what he thinks he's getting them from, but from the moldy raisins. And Barkus comes to him and guides him on an odyssey to rescue him from his sleep. And so it's a soundtrack to all that. And there are people in Barkus. There's people that play the voice of Barkus. It's mostly instrumental. It's soundtracks. I've always loved soundtracks. And by virtue of talking about it now, I must finish it.
Now, is Barkus a wooden dog in his visions?
I
think casting it would be a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be on the wooden dog is going to be on the album cover, but in the actual movie, Barkus is there he is. I hear him.
Barkus is coming.
Barkus is coming.
2024.
At a theater far, far from you. He's a real hallucination.
I got genuine. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate like a real dog playing Barkus?
Yeah, if you know one. Auditions will be held over at Happy App with Kevin Abernathy supervising.
We actually know a dog model.
Really?
We know someone. He's a sign dog model. So
can he act? I mean, Tippi Hedren, that's and from Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds, which we talked about earlier as well. She was a model, and look what happened. She was great in The Birds. So I'm not against a dog model trying to act. Not against it. Not ruling it out here.
Modeling, just acting.
Well, it's a fun record because it's challenging, because it's instrumental, and I want things to create moods and things like that. And it was started during the pandemic when people weren't playing together, and I went on an app called Sound Better and just started hiring musicians from all over the world. So there's a drummer from Zimbabwe, there's a sax player from Argentina, there's a harmonica player from Brazil, and there's a sax player, a trombone player from Greenville, or wherever.
Yeah.
And so it's all these people I've never met, and they're all great musicians.
Yeah. Did you go in with the idea for the orchestration, or was that something that came as you were like, oh, it's a great harmonica player, we got to work him into this?
I knew in my mind that I wanted to sound orchestral sounding, but I don't know how to write or read music. But with Logic or whatever, you can tell it to figure it out for you. I'll write it and you print it out for someone. But I did have an idea to like, I would hear big parts. I used a fiddle player from Nashville who really did just a bunch of. So there's a string quartet in one section, and there's cellos and things I've always wanted to do. I'm not sure it's very good. So if you're thinking about buying it when it comes out, you listen first.
As long as on Bandcamp, you can do that.
Yeah.
If that's where it's headed, or maybe not. Maybe you'll just.
It's going to lose money either way.
Yeah.
So if you,
like any good music project, actually, yeah.
It's going to lose money. It's already lost money. And I don't, it's weird, over the years I don't know what's happened, but failure is like,
it's liberating.
It's attractive.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to fail. So I'm just going to fail. So let's have some fun, and also it's weird too, because self-promotion on some level to me feels a bit wrong. I don't mind sharing things I've done with people.
Right.
But to like really push it, really like sell it hard, or really, I don't feel like doing that. I'd just rather put it out there and just like, if it sucks to you,
well, I think that's why.
Okay.
Well, that's why so many of these, I can, as someone who spent some time in the world of jazz and the language we can talk about, it's probably why a lot of jazz musicians have promoters to push their stuff, because it's
Exactly.
like you put so much of your heart and soul into this. Like, do you really want to send it to 50 people just for no one to get back to you because of, they got 4,000 submissions in 4 months of the year?
Yeah, and some of the young jazz musicians that will send me stuff sometimes that I take a cotton to, I can tell that they're not comfortable really promoting themselves, and don't have a lot of background in how to at least present, things. And sometimes I'll if I've talked to them, I'll just say like, and I don't mean this in a facetious way. I'll say like, okay, here's a couple of tips, maybe hire a publicist if you can afford it, or on the album cover, put the times of the songs, so like
Right.
radio people will go like, oh, I can fit this in, just little things like that, because almost all the jazz musicians, they don't have that killer self-promotion instinct that I've found, and if they do, they're not comfortable with it. And I'm starting to really understand it. I used to have no shame,
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about that right now, though. I want to talk about your music. What are the things that inspired you for this? Like, what were some of the influences that you were bringing in for the because you mentioned you like instrumental and you like soundtracks. What were some of the soundtracks that were formative?
Oh well, Ennio Morricone. That's for me the gold standard. I can't remember the name of Bernard Herrmann. I think did a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies. Here that comes again.
Hit the spring.
Yeah, and then people that write, and like Frank Zappa or something, that put together really crazy stuff that involves all sorts of music, that potpourri, his instrumental work, not when he's singing about penguins in bondage or whatever that song was. But nothing against that one. But yeah, all those folks, and just any film that had a great soundtrack, you know, like even The Longest Day or things like that, or Filled Glass.
Yeah.
Any number of things.
It's funny because all these people have radically different, you know, Philip Glass versus Morricone. It's like there's very different approaches to scoring, you know. And I guess for you, especially because you have you sort of see, you're thinking cinematically when you're writing these parts.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen where, as opposed to responding to what someone else has put down. In that process for you, do you do things like is it leitmotif? Is that the one the one where it's like the instrument has like its own, you know, are there like themes that work their way through it?
Yeah. And that was the fun part. And this is the fun part of it. It would never happen when I was like an 18-year-old, you know, with a cassette recorder, or a 23-year-old with a 4-track cassette, which is pretty damn exciting. Still is. But to be able to go, I like your harmonica part, but can you play it on a bass harmonica? And you go to bed, and you wake up, and somebody, and this is the guy in Brazil, and he'd have this incredible bass harmonica, and he would go, I know what you're going for, put a bunch of reverb on it, and he'd tell me like reverb settings and things like that, and then I would say, okay, oh, this is great. Well, I love what he did. I'm going to like transcribe that for guitar and play what he played on guitar, and then, you know, and that becomes a later theme. And it's never, in a way, I don't want to finish.
Yeah.
Because I've rarely had this kind of experience where I have finally. It's just kind of ironic, you know, that now that I've officially sucked at trying to make a living playing music. You know, I made a little go of it for a short bit. And I had a $200 Fender Squier and an old Music Man amp. And that was it, you know, 2 pedals, no tools. And now that I don't have to make a living playing music, I have all the tools you could dream of. And they didn't cost very much. You know, Logic is $200, $300.
Yeah.
And, you know, now I've got a job with a regular paycheck, and so I bought a guitar that stays in tune. Have you ever seen those?
I've heard of them.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever actually seen one.
You gotta get one. They have whammy bars, and you like do that, and then you bring it back up, and it's still in tune. Like I can now afford a guitar that stays in tune, and a tuner, just in case it doesn't.
Yeah. Or put in other tunings. I mean.
Yeah.
Well, hell.
Drop D at least.
I'm actually.
Here's a drop D. Drop F.
What is. Man, now, folks at home, if you know what note that is, you can feel free to comment on the comment section. I don't know. Do you know what it is? What's voodoo? What's voodoo in? I think that's the note from that Godsmack song. That's the I'm not the one. That's the note.
I hear it.
Yeah. But just a minute. I just kind of say because I'm so excited. I just bought the Squier Bass 6, and I am super stoked. Do you ever play a Bass 6 before?
I know what it is, but I've never played one.
Oh man, and I'm ready for it because I think it's going to be horrible. It's going to stay horribly out of. It'll be hard to keep in tune.
Yeah.
So
like a sitar, you know.
Yeah. Just
good luck.
Yeah.
Banjos even.
I know. So you're mainly a guitar player. Do you play other instruments as well?
If you consider bouzouki an instrument.
All right, we got this.
Right.
Dun.
Whoa.
What is it? It's an A?
Well, I was way off.
Damn. No, didn't you say A?
I said G. I was a step off.
See, I thought you said A at first, and I said G because I was like, oh, it's a banjo, and then
I can't. According to my recollection, it was.
You said G and you said F.
Yeah.
Oh dang. All right.
But we were both wrong. It's great.
Yeah.
I knew it was one of the notes. It was
But
one of the notes.
we're both subpar jazz musicians, and it's showing.
Well, that's just further reinforcement that I probably shouldn't play jazz.
Yeah.
What was the question? What was
instruments?
Oh yeah. I have a fondness for the bouzouki, the Greek instrument, and I play a little piano. But that's the next instrument I really want to work on is bouzouki.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you play Greek music? Do you have an interest in Greek music?
I have a deep interest in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Where does that come from? Just
Greece.
I mean,
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
You set that one up on a tee.
I definitely did.
I didn't have any choice. You wanted me to hit that ball off that tee.
Yeah. Subconsciously, I definitely did. But so obviously the music comes from Greece. Where does the interest come from? From being in Greece, or?
Yeah, I went to Greece in 1999, and I went into I just heard a lot of the music there and just fell in love with it. I know Kenny Vaughn, the guitar player of Nashville, and there's a guy with no stink on him. He's a great bouzoukiist, and I just think it's a great sounding instrument, and it's fun to put in music. I've used it on a couple of records. I was in one of the bands I did was called Ape Life, and there's a lot of bouzouki in that on those recordings. But I would like to when I finish up here, get on a plane and fly to Crete and study bouzouki for 2 years.
When you're finished with this interview?
Yeah, that's what I would like to do.
Okay.
But I'll probably go home and walk my dog.
Well, but folks at home, if you're listening,
that dog's a dream killer.
Yeah, every time. Is your dog inspired? It's like, what kind of dog do you have? Is it like, could your dog act in your film?
Oh yeah, she's like not so subtle about when I'm recording, coming in wagging her tail. Oh, and
do you have dog in the actual score?
She's actually on the record. Yeah, she's on a song on the opening track, on the theme, on Barkus theme, and so it was funny because I wanted to make sure she has a very unique bark, and if you throw the tennis ball a certain way, she'll bark every time, like this one staccato kind of bark. And so I went and set up all this recording gear out by her toy. And if she's listening, she's like, toy, crazy toy. And I recorded her, and then I just sampled that. And then anytime there's a song or the Barkus theme, or it goes, don't da-da-lum, don't da-da-lum. And then I'd drop it down an octave and put it up an octave and multi-track her bark. And I remember that song's actually freaking finished. So she came in when I was mixing it, and she was so confused because as soon as she saw me in there, I just started pressing her bark over and over. I had it triggered on the keyboard, and she was looking up, that cocked head. She's a mixed hound, and if she's listening, you will get royalties.
Well, the dog model we know actually is a singing. What is this breed in? Like an American dingo?
Well, this is Dargie. Dargie is what you call an American dingo, which is called a Carolina hound.
Yeah. So,
she's a Carolina hound. Yeah.
But does she do like this dog sings?
She does.
Yeah. Oh, she does?
Yeah,
okay.
she does. In fact, she has this, she's a Carolina hound, which is called the American dingo by some. And, I can imitate, those kinds of things. It's Johnny Carson. I mean, she does all sorts of crazy stuff.
She didn't say it's Johnny Carson?
Almost.
Okay.
She speaks English, but very poorly.
Yeah.
We're working on it. As soon as I finish this, she's getting on a plane and going to an English language program in London.
Yeah, well, that's good. Not far from Greece, You guys can.
Yeah, you can go to Greece.
Yeah. There we go. Spend time across the pond together. This has been great. We're somehow we're there at the end of our time.
Someone's going to come in and throw us out.
Oh yeah. No, we have. Did you hire the guy with the hook? He's outside? Okay.
I've been thrown out of the Sunsphere before. It wouldn't be the first time. And speaking of your sponsor, Raven Records, Jay Nations worked at the World's Fair. He was the elevator operator for the Sunsphere.
Whoa.
Back in the days when they had elevator operators, he was... And I remember like thinking, how cool he gets to ride up and down. And I was working in a parking lot, and I was like, man, I'm so envious, Jay. He's like, it sucks. It's a sucky job.
Yeah, I could see a lot of just standing in that little box.
Yeah, and then I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, I think it only lasted like 2 weeks.
No. I could believe that.
Yeah. Once you've ridden up and down the Sunsphere 4,000 times, then you're like, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Real quick, I'd like for you to tell the story about the tapes you used to send out, like the personalized recordings on them.
Oh, the tapes.
Oh, yeah, so...
I say as if I know.
Yeah,
Please tell us about the tapes.
The mystery tapes. Yeah, so just Smoke and Dave, before we had enough money to put out vinyl, which was a real thrill, to actually we finally put some out again last year. Historic Knoxville High is the title. 2 LPs, one more than you need. But we used to make cassettes. We had one called Planting a Dead Tree. And we would just get a 6-pack of beer and some snacks. And we would sit down at Raven Records after my shift, and we would record a unique set on each one, the first 6 songs, and then each one had a unique set on it. And, of course, I never at the time thought, well, I should make copies of these, because some of those were songs we wrote on the spot some of them were terrible. Some were not. And, we probably made 30 or 40 100% unique cassettes. And I think I have one, but it doesn't have anything unique on the end. It's like, I know there's no need to put that on there for me. But I would love to have all those back. If you're listening, we want those back. Those are rentals.
And people would order them? How would they?
Oh, we just put them up at Raven Records.
And people would just buy them?
Yeah. They were $6.
Cool.
And people would come in and they would, even then I was like, I was a little bit shy about self-promotion. But people would come and ask for local bands and stuff. And, I'd say, well, you might want to try the Judy Bats, or something. But occasionally people come in and want a Smoke and Dave record, and I was like, well, there you go. This one has a unique B-side, and it's all unique. And one time a guy came in. There used to be this horrible pickup joint called Michael's Cow Palace out on Kingston Pike, and that's all relative. If you loved it, then I'm sorry that I said it. But the DJ from there came in and said, I'm looking for a Smoking Dave 45, and I was like. And we, anybody that bought the record, I knew who they were, because it was, the same 200 people, right? And so here's someone with a nice shirt coming to buy our record. This is unbelievable. And he's a DJ at a nightclub. And he goes, have you heard this? And I went, yeah. He goes, this is the record that will clear any room at the end of the night. And he goes, guaranteed. So if you're wanting to end a party, you should play that. And I was like, I'll keep that in mind. That's $2, please. And I was still thrilled to have a sale. It was a bit humbling. And I talked to people that said they used your 45 to run people off the other night. I was like, wow, okay. It's airplay.
Yeah.
It's play.
All press is good press, you know what I mean?
Proof.
Yeah. Man, this has been great. Is there a good place we should direct folks to check out your stuff? Do you have a website up or?
Yeah, they should. Topeka, Kansas would be a great place to start. But if you can't get there,
just Google Maps that.
Just go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Don't follow Google.
You'll find it.
They'll send you the wrong Topeka. Just look up Todd Steed on Bandcamp or Smoke and Dave and the Primo Dopes on Bandcamp, and just about everything we've done is there.
Amazing.
Except the live recordings on the back of cassettes. Sorry.
That's right. And your new music will be uploaded to
by December the 23rd.
To the date.
Yeah, at noon.
Keep an eye out for it, folks. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ryan, who's in here sitting and hanging with us. This has been another Meet Music Knoxville. Again, a special thank you to Raven Records and Rarities. I love how much we get to shout them out on the show today. Thank you for your support, and we will be back again with another show last Friday of the month in May. I don't know why I'm looking at you so questioningly. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.
Well, I was born in this very town back in 1961. Things were different then. Yeah, my father didn't own a gun. Here I go feeling like the Sunsphere again. Standing up to the world, but I come up short again. When I grew up, I grew a little down. When I realized where I was, questions seemed such a waste. So did my stupid hidden cause. Here I go feeling like Calvin's feet again. Thought I had something to say, but it never did fit in. When I was young, learned all I needed to know from watching that Andy Griffith show. Like so many folks, I moved away to a distant land. But every train track I was on circled right back here again. Here I go feeling like that hit summit again. Folks stand behind you, but don't forgive when you don't win. Here I go feeling like Patricia Neal again. Trying to heal the world, but I'm dying from within. When I was young, learned all I needed to know from watching that Cass Walker show.